I'm trying to figure out how Scarlet Witch wears this to fight. Like, how does it not fall off?
Magic.
Magic. Oh, God.
If I could just use my power to hold this mask on my forehead, hold my mind together.
Hold my mind together. Oh, poor thing. This is a spoiler-free Scarlet Witch headpiece tutorial. No, seriously, I have a big problem with people who go to watch WandaVision at like 12:01 Friday morning and then log into their social media accounts at like 8 o'clock a.m. so they can post all these details and spoilers about the show because they're so excited about what they saw. But don't you think I want to be excited about it when I watch it? Not all of us are going to stay awake and watch it the minute it's released on Disney+. So maybe let's stop being so inconsiderate and full of ourselves because we want the internet to know we were the first ones to see it, and just let everybody enjoy the show the way that you enjoyed it. No one cares that you were the first person in the world to see WandaVision this week. Whoosah. Okay, I'm cool. Let's do the intro thingy. What I'm not sorry about is this headpiece. Isn't it great? I just keep waiting for it to tip over, but it's not. It's secure, and I'm so excited about it. So I'm going to show you how to make this headpiece, and if you stick around until the end, I've got a surprise for you. First, let me point out that this video is spoiler-free, and what I mean is that we will not reveal any details about what's going on WandaVision on Disney+. Except it's so freaking good. Go watch it now if you can. But nothing else, I promise. Well, except for some Wanda witch facts. So this is not actually the headpiece from the show on Disney+, and that's the spoiler-free version. In fact, Wanda is not even Scarlet Witch in the Marvel movies. At least she hasn't been up to the most recent movie, so there's been no headpiece in any of the movies where we've seen her in action. Wanda Maximoff, as she is known in the Marvel movie universe, is just Wanda. She's not a mutant because there are no mutants in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She is known as Scarlet Witch in the X-Men comic universe, but has not made an appearance in any of the Sony X-Men movies. There's a whole business reason why the Avengers and the X-Men aren't in movies together, even though they are technically all Marvel. Now that Marvel movies and Marvel television shows are under one umbrella, we may see a melding of the two in future shows and movies. I don't know, maybe they'll start with WandaVision. We can only know as we continue to watch. For the purposes of this tutorial, however, it's important to know that the headpiece does not exist in WandaVision or the Marvel movies. No spoilers. I'm a comic book fanatic, but I'm still fairly new to the comic geek lifestyle. I had Hubs explain all this to me. He's the expert. Much of my research for my favorite characters and cosplays come from the comic books since we collect them. To me, most of the characters we love originated in the comics anyway, so my designs for costumes and headpieces are heavily inspired by comics instead of shows. In most cases. Either way, if you want to see Hubs in person explaining the movie and television show breakdown between Sony and Marvel Studios, let me know in the comments below and I'll try to beg him to make an appearance to explain it. If you like origin stories and histories of characters, I watched an awesome video that explained in full and spoiler-free the origin of the Scarlet Witch as she appears in the comics. It's super interesting and may help explain some of the Easter eggs that appear in the television show. If you didn't know, I don't just build costumes. I like to know everything about the character that I'm cosplaying. I love a good origin story. So for this video, you knew it was gonna come back around eventually, right? I thought it would be cool to show you how to make this headpiece since WandaVision is the hot show right now. Plus, I have an Etsy shop to fill. Okay, one more quick bonus about the headpiece that Scarlet Witch wears. Just one, I promise, this is the last one. If you want to skip straight to the tutorial, then the timestamp is in the description box, so just click on it and away you go. According to Screen Rant, Wanda's or Scarlet Witch's comic book costumes can give you a hint on how her stories will go. See, Wanda has seen a lot of trauma in her life, and so she struggles with mental illness and trying to deal with all the things that she's had to actually deal with. I think that the mental illness stems from this trauma, and keeping it together is actually pretty hard for her. Like 2020 for most of us, right? So she's got these awesomely powerful abilities, but a not so strong psyche. When you see her in her headpiece and in all of her scarlet glory, she's really sure of herself and pretty much has it together. She's confident and she's out to save the world. When she's not, however, her mind and powers are a bit more chaotic. She's susceptible to mind control, mental deterioration, and chaos. TLDR, bad things happen. For this tutorial, however, we are going to make the headpiece that shows how sure of herself and confident Scarlet Witch is when she wears it. So let's get into the tutorial. This tutorial is going to show you how to make this headpiece with materials that most cosplayers have on hand. However, if you don't, that's okay. I provide links in the description box for where you can purchase them. Quick disclaimer, the links that I provide in most of my videos are going to be affiliate links, especially if they're Amazon links. By clicking on the link, you're not charged anything, you don't pay anymore, but I am awarded a small stipend if you choose to purchase directly from that link. Of course, you lose nothing, but I gain some coins to help me keep making the videos that I make on this channel, and I am very grateful to you for your support. So here's what you need. The basic headpiece is made out of EVA foam. The other supplies that you're going to need are a template. So I keep my templates in envelopes labeled so that I know what they are when I'm ready to make them again. Here's the template that we will use, and as you can see, it is half of the exact shape of the headpiece. I only needed half because I will flip it over and trace the other half. You will need foam. The regular sheets that you can find in Michael's, or if you shop at Hobby Lobby, you can find some there. You can definitely use those. I use 5 or 6 millimeter because I like the strength that it provides when I'm doing headpieces or masks that require fitting onto my head. It's just thick enough where when I use the heat gun, I'm confident that it's not gonna flop all over the place. I'm using this really large sheet of Yaya Han foam that you can find at Joann's. I have a local Joann's that's pretty close to me, so when I need a large sheet of foam, that works for me. This headpiece is larger than an 8 by 11, 8 by 10. What's the size?
8.5 by 11.
8.5 by 11. That's why he has to monitor these videos. The headpiece is larger than a regular sheet of paper, and so that's why I used this huge sheet of foam. If you use kind of the regular size, however, then you will take half of it and you will cut out half of it, and then you will have to glue them together. Pro tip, when we use the heat gun or blow dryer on our foam to form and shape it to our heads, the glue will come off because the heat will melt the glue. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to form the foam over your head, and I'll go over this later, before you glue it. If you want to check it out, go to Joann's. They have them usually in stock and they've got different thicknesses, and I think that you will probably be happier with the one sheet where you don't have to cut it in half. But we do what we have to do, right? I also have a thinner piece of foam that I will use for tabs in the back of the headpiece. So again, later on I'll show you exactly how I use that. But I've got 2 different sizes, and so the very thin size and then the 5 or 6 millimeters of foam. You will need a pencil or chalk so that you can trace the template onto your foam. I use chalk because I can see chalk. You can also use a Sharpie. I can see Sharpie on the black Sharpie on the black foam, but sometimes it's hard to see, so it just really depends on how your eyesight is or what you prefer. Chalk will work, a pencil will work, Sharpie will work, whatever you have on hand. A box cutter or X-Acto knife, whatever it's called, you'll need one of these. And you'll need one of these if you want to detail your headpiece, is what it's called. And then you will also need a sharpener. You will need a cutting mat. Do not judge my warped and misshapen cutting mat. It works for me, but I probably do need to get a new one. But you will need one. You don't want to cut into your table or whatever surface that you're using to create your masterpiece. You will need a heat gun. This is optional but very convenient. I find that once I started using this, it was very hard to do any project with foam or Worbla without it. For foam, you can use a blow dryer if you don't have a heat gun. And then you will need a glue gun. So just for something, you know, just little tiny things that we want to perhaps fix or attach to our headpiece toward the end, then if you have a glue gun, you will need it. If you prefer not to use a glue gun, and sometimes I don't really like using glue guns, and you have contact cement, then you can use that as well, but make sure that you are either wearing a a protection over your face, a mask, or you are using it in a very well ventilated area, and be careful with it around your pets. You will need your own head for shaping the headpiece or a mannequin head. It's not necessary. I have one for wig styling, and so I prefer to put the hot foam or hot Worbla onto the head to form it. The foam doesn't really get as hot, and so you don't have to worry about burning yourself. You will need primer, paint, and a sealant. More on that later. And you will need hairpins and or elastic, and also more on that later. So those are some of the things that you will need. I have some paintbrushes on hand. I've got some scissors that I use specifically for foam. I've got extra glue sticks just in case I need them. And I've got paper towels because I'm clumsy. So a little bit about the headpiece that I'm wearing. This is actually made from foam and Worbla, so it's a little more advanced as far as the technique that you use to make it. I use Worbla for anything that I offer in my Etsy store because it's stronger and it's more durable, and I like to know that when I'm sending things to my followers and fans that they are going to be able to use it without worrying about it breaking or bending. I can assure you, however, that when I started with foam and I didn't know how to use Worbla, and I did my shadow weaver with complete foam and no Worbla, and I've done a lot of other masks and props and accessories with just foam. So you'll be fine with the foam headpiece. Once we get it painted and finished, you won't have to worry about misshaping it unless you like run it over, but I wouldn't advise doing that. Here's a secret about Scarlet Witch's headpiece. There is no right or canon way to do it. No cosplay Nazi is going to come and get you if you miss a line here or a bend there. When you read the comics and watch the animated X-Men shows, you will observe that in every iteration of her story, the headpiece looks a bit different. The artists working on each storyline are free to interpret the costumes as they wish, so long as they stick to the basic original design. In this case, we know Scarlet Witch by the shape of her headpiece, usually an upside down W. Or do you think it's an M for Maximoff? Either way, here is my design and the design process as I was thinking through how I wanted this to look. After sketching out what I wanted, I measured my head to determine how wide and how tall I wanted the headpiece to sit. You can do the same for yours. Just determine how tall you want your version to be and then measure the width of your face from ear to ear. I used pattern paper from the roll for my template, but the final version takes up 4 pieces of 8.5 by 11 paper taped together. For my viewers and to show my appreciation, I am providing you with a free template so you do not have to worry about creating it from scratch. The link in the description box will take you to my website where you'll find the free template so that you can make your very own headpiece. All you have to do is print, tape, and cut it out. You may want to hold it up to your head to make sure it isn't too small or too big, but I made it pretty tall nonetheless. Surprise! Next, we're going to trace the template out of foam and cut it out. So right here, you're going to see me pinning the template to the foam, and that's so when I'm tracing it, it doesn't move. It keeps it still for me, and that's just a little trick that I learned on the YouTubes. I'm using a Sharpie to go ahead and trace the template here. You'll notice that the foam isn't as dark as the Sharpie, so we will be able to see exactly what we're cutting. It really just depends on the type of foam you're using. I found some to be very dark and others you can see a Sharpie. So you can decide whether you want to use chalk or a chalk pen or a Sharpie. So now we're flipping our template, and because this is one continuous piece of foam, we can just continue the template tracing right here. If you had a smaller piece of foam, then you would use your template to trace out the shape onto another piece of foam, and then in the middle, you would glue it together after heat forming it. So in a minute, we will see how to heat form it, and then after that, you'll glue it, although I don't go over it in this video. So you can use sharp scissors if you prefer, or you can use the box cutters. I'm using the box cutters here, although I have used both. They work on any kind of foam as long as your scissors are sharpened, and I'm sharpening the box cutters here. Usually I sharpen the scissors the same way. No one's ever told me that I shouldn't, and it works just fine. So sometimes I prefer the way that the foam turns out when I use scissors. I just have more control with scissors, less control with the box cutters, but I think it's a learning process, so the more you practice, the better you'll get. But those are my scissors. They're marked foam. And also, don't forget to use a mat to protect your surfaces. So you want a self-healing cutting mat, and as you can see, mine is kind of peeking out from the bottom there. The sharper your blade, the cleaner the cut. That's how that works, and it's always a great thing when you're finished and you can just pull that foam right up without having to kind of wiggle and work your way through it. This is one of my favorite parts of cutting foam. Now, once you cut it, the design is completely up to you. You don't have to put a design in it. You can leave it plain, as you've seen in some of the comic book photos, or you can make your own personal style. That's my favorite part. I love making my own personal cosplay pieces that are unique to me while staying as close to the original as, well, I want, because it's mine. So I'm gonna use this X-Acto knife clay cutter thingy to scale a line or two into the foam. Just scale it, you don't wanna cut all the way through. The cool thing about this is that once it's heated with the heat gun, the line will expand and you'll be able to see the design. And once you paint it, it'll show the line, and you can even weather that line for more detail. I'll show you how later. Okay, so now we can use the heat gun to smooth out the foam and shape it. And this is where you're gonna start seeing your piece come into its form. If you don't have a heat gun, no worries, you can use a blow dryer. But full disclosure, it will take longer to heat and form. You just have to be patient. Be careful when using heat, please. The heat gun gets really, really hot and can burn you. I have two settings on mine. I like the high setting because there are times when I have absolutely no patience, and because I feel that I can get it done faster. But you can use whichever setting is most comfortable for you. The heat gun gets very, very hot and it can burn you. I have a scar to prove it. So don't allow the heat to come into contact with your skin, and don't keep the heat on the foam too long or you actually can burn your foam. Just heat the entire piece until it's hot to the touch, and then shape it to your mannequin head or your own head after letting it cool some, or with your hands. So you don't have to use a mannequin head, you can shape it with your hands and just use your imagination to figure out how you want it to look. So just continue to reheat and reshape and work with it until it looks exactly the way you want it to look. Quick pro tip. Cosplay is a practice in patience. It really, really helps when you're working with foam or Worbla or paint or anything to go slow and take your time and do a little bit at a time. You want to love your piece in the end, and there really is no rush. So just go slow and try to make sure that you're doing everything the right way. Something I learned this week, you can actually throw your foam piece in the freezer after you finished heat shaping it and forming it the way that you want it, and it helps it set better and faster. I didn't know, but I'm going to give it a try. So once it's set, be careful to keep the shape and don't test the force to see if you can get it to go back. How are you going to get it to stay on your head, huh? Yeah, don't listen to editing me. I was probably hangry when I was editing this. So what I like to do with my foam pieces is glue a thin strip of foam to look like a loopy thingy on the back. I am going to trademark that term. It is loopy thingy. So this is how I do it, and you'll see that I'm going to use the glue gun to go ahead and attach it once I can get my camera to focus. But it's going to look just like that. So you'll be able to either pass elastic through it, or you'll be able to put a bobby pin or a hairpin in it. Here's a pro tip for you that I learned recently. You see how that glue is just not sticking and I have to hold it down because hot glue gun is a pain? Look at this. If you've got one of these computer cleaning screen thingies, yep, that's what we're calling it, then you can give it a good spray and it will set, all ready to go without having to wait for it to get cold. So now I can attach a bobby pin or a hairpin or elastic to the back, and the little loopy thingy gives you options. You're welcome. So we have Mod Podge, which is my go-to for primer and sealer. I recently tried their FX Cosplay line, and the primer in that line is so epic that I almost cried when I applied paint over the dried headpiece. Extra, maybe, but I'm that passionate about my paints. You can use what you have. If you want to try plaid, you know where to find the links. Now, I have to admit that painting is my absolute favorite part of this process, hands down. There's nothing better to me than having a paintbrush in one hand and bottles of Plaid FX paint at my disposal. And yes, I'm totally endorsing Plaid paints because I've been using them for years and there's nothing equal to the coverage I get with Plaid. So it's perfection every time for me. I most recently became an ambassador, so I do receive free paints and supplies to try, but because I've used them for longer than I knew about any ambassador program, just know that I wouldn't use them if they made my creations look like trash, period. So you need at least 30 minutes between coats, an hour is better, of everything. It will look dry and then you'll say, oh, it's dry, I can paint it now. And then you'll have a goppy, gross mess of a paint job with discolored splotches of goo to contend with. And now that the primer is dry, you can see how wonderfully smooth it looks. It's going to make it much easier now to apply the paint without having to worry about it sinking into the porous foam. So what I like to do is mix my paints until I get the color that I want. This is totally up to you. It's your headpiece and you should make it the way you want. I personally use 2 coats of paint, sometimes 3. When I'm using Worbla, I only need 2 coats of paint, sometimes if even that. But when I'm using foam, I find that it's still just a little porous depending on how much primer you put on, so you may need to use more than 2 coats. But it really also depends on the coverage and the color. You just have to pay attention to how it looks once it's dry, which is why it's really, really important for it to dry completely. Once the paint is dry, you can seal it and then it's done. And for those of you who enjoy watching paint as much as I do, here are a few seconds of painting pleasure for you. you want to dabble in paint just a little bit more, then we can weather the piece, and I'm going to show you exactly how I weather my headpieces. I use a small paintbrush and a mix of darker red paint. I've just applied a little bit of black into it so that it can look like a shadow of itself. I will wet a paper towel, and I'll start with just kind of lining the edges and whatever lines I've drawn into the piece. And you'll see later on that I get just a little bit impatient because it doesn't always work that way, because I keep rubbing it off and I will just start dabbing the paper towel directly into the paint and wiping it onto the piece. And then I will half wipe on, half wipe off, and eventually it will get that weathered look that I'm looking for. This is another one of those things that just takes a lot of practice and a lot of patience. The first time I tried to weather something, it didn't work at all, and I was really disappointed. But I just kept trying and kept practicing, and you get better, and it gets better every single time you do it. You just really have to put the time and the dedication into making it look the way that you want. Again, you don't have to weather your piece. You may want a brand spanking new piece. I just like my things to look a little bit more used, I guess, and it just looks realistic to have the shadows in there. And you'll see in just a minute how I work that out. Now you can seal it, add some hairpins, and you're done. So that's it, your very own Scarlet Witch headpiece for cosplay, or however you want to wear it, or if you just want to wear it around the house and feel like a badass. It works. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching this video. If you use this tutorial or my template to create your very own headpiece, I would love to see it. So please let us know in the comments how it turns out. If you follow me on Instagram, and I hope you do because the link is in the description box for you to go and find me, then please share a photo of you wearing your headpiece, and I will share it in my stories along with your handle so that people can see your other gorgeous cosplay creations. The pattern can be found at the link in the description box, and it will take you to my website where you can print out the pattern. You will need a printer or access to one. I usually go to the UPS store when I need to have something printed. Their prices are pretty decent. I also read that you can go to your local library or the post office and they can make copies for you. I would call before going in so that you can make sure that your local establishments, wherever you choose to go, they provide that service for you. If you do choose to go out, then please, please, please be safe, be careful, and wear a mask.
Anyone can wear the mask. You could wear the mask. If you didn't know that before, I hope you do now.
Stay tuned for the next video. We will be talking about cosplay hairstyles. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Go watch that WandaVision episode on Disney Plus if you can, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as we do. Have a safe weekend. Happy cosplaying, everyone.